Hey there, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into something that feels kind of like straight out of science fiction, the Consocio project. You've sent over a whole stack of research papers, white papers, even some diagrams. I gotta say, some of these look like they hold the secrets to the universe.
Sounds like you're serious about getting a handle on this. And you're right to be intrigued. From what I'm seeing, Consocio, it isn't just another tech project. It's aiming to be like a whole new model for society itself.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. We've got eubiosis, programmable governance, a coefficient of consociation. Where do we even begin with all this?
Well, I think the best place to start with all this is with the why. The materials that you sent over, they paint a pretty stark picture of the global challenges that Consocio claims to address. We're talking like 1.6 million deaths every year due to violence and conflict. And it doesn't stop there. $14.76 trillion.
Well, hold on. $14 trillion?
Yeah, $14.76 trillion. That's 12.4% of the global GDP. Gone. Just in 2017 alone. And all because of conflict.
See, those numbers are staggering. Absolutely staggering. But it's easy to kind of gloss over statistics, right? I mean, it's important to remember we're talking about real lives here.
Yeah.
Real human suffering hidden behind all those figures.
You're exactly right. And Consocio, it definitely does not let you forget that human cost. The research highlights that 40,000 people die every single day because they don't have enough food. And this isn't like a scarcity issue. We have the resources. It's a distribution problem. It's systems failure.
Yeah.
And that's what Consocio wants to tackle.
And then you layer on top of all of that this looming threat of climate catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
Which adds this whole other level of urgency to an already kind of bleak picture. But what's interesting here is that Consocio, they link all these global challenges to something that we often think of as this personal struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a connection we don't often make. The research you sent over states that two-thirds of daily deaths are linked to stress-related causes. Think about that, two-thirds. Consocio's argument is that a lot of the stress we're all carrying around stems from these systems that are failing us on a global scale. It's this vicious cycle, and they're trying to break it.
So we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff. Global challenges, stress, climate catastrophe, $14 trillion. With all of this as a backdrop, what's the solution? What kind of solution does Consocio propose?
Oh, this is where it gets really, really interesting. They're not talking about incremental improvements. No Band-Aid solutions here. Consocio is proposing a complete paradigm shift toward what they call eubiosis.
Eubiosis. Sounds kind of like something you'd hear in a philosophy seminar,
It does, doesn't it? But Consocio, they ground it in tangible goals. They define eubiosis as this harmonious balance between natural and artificial systems, achieved by focusing on four key pillars: climatic action, longevity, prosperity, and peace.
Okay, so ambitious goals, sure. But it's the how that really matters, right? What makes Consocio different? What are they actually going to do?
That's the real question, isn't it? And it's the how that really sets Consocio apart. One of their core concepts, and I think this is one of the most revolutionary things about them, is something they call programmable governance.
Programmable governance. Now that sounds like we've time traveled to the future. Break it down for us. What does that even mean?
So imagine a system of governance, right? But the rules, they aren't set in stone. Instead, they're like encoded into algorithms. They're transparent, publicly verifiable, and they can adapt to changing circumstances. That's the essence of programmable governance.
So instead of relying on like traditional institutions, we've got algorithms making decisions about resource allocation, conflict resolution, even things like climate policy.
In a way, yes. But it's not about replacing humans altogether. Blockchain is crucial here. It ensures that these encoded rules are secure and can't be tampered with. Then you've got natural language processing that makes these complex rules understandable to us humans. And AI analyzes huge amounts of data to help make decisions based on, predefined parameters that are set by human stakeholders. It all works together.
So it's like creating a more efficient system,
Yeah.
a more transparent system, maybe even, dare I say, a more fair system for governing ourselves.
That's the idea. But of course, the success of a system like this depends entirely on the integrity of the code itself, right? And the humans who define those initial goals and parameters. But the potential impact, it's huge. It's undeniable.
It's definitely a lot to wrap your head around, especially since we're just getting started. You've got a whole stack of unique concepts to unpack here. From those intriguing diagrams you sent to something called, what was it, U-Broom Cub 2H units. What are those all about?
Okay, so this is where Consocio gets really granular. They're attempting to quantify every aspect of our impact on the world, from the food that we consume to the data that we process. Think of it like a global carbon footprint calculator, but like way, way more comprehensive.
Okay, this is where my inner cynic starts to get a little worried. Like, are we headed into, Big Brother territory, quantifying every little thing we do? That sounds a little intense, even for a futurist like me.
Oh, I totally get it. It's a valid concern, and it's one that Consocio anticipates. Their argument is that this isn't about surveillance. It's about responsibility. It's about responsible resource management on a global scale. Each of those units you mentioned, UBR for energy, UBC for data, UBT for transportation, and UBH for physical space, it allows for a much more nuanced understanding of our impact, both individually and collectively.
So instead of just saying, like, use less water,
Mhm.
we have a system that can actually pinpoint exactly where those resources are being wasted and figure out how to, like, optimize their use.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just identifying the problems. By quantifying these metrics, Consocio aims to create a system where positive actions, like if you reduce your energy consumption or if you choose to use sustainable transportation, those things can be incentivized, rewarded even. It's about creating a feedback loop, right? Where individual actions can have a real impact on those global challenges we were talking about. But you're right, who gets to set those limits? And who decides how we allocate all those resources in this brave new world?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's easy to imagine a system like this being, co-opted for not-so-great purposes.
For sure, and Consocio knows this, which is why they've come up with this other revolutionary concept. They call it the Stakeholder Foundation. So think of it like a decentralized organization where literally everyone, every individual, every business, even governments can have a voice, a stake in how the whole system works.
Hold on, everyone on the planet gets a say. That sounds like a recipe for, well, chaos, frankly.
I know, right? It sounds crazy, but that's where the focus on transparency comes in, and those carefully defined algorithms that we were discussing. See, the idea is that the stakeholder foundation, it wouldn't be ruled by mob mentality. It would be guided by a set of principles, goals that everyone agrees on beforehand. And the decisions are weighted by things like your contribution to the system and how much you're actually aligned with this idea of eubiosis.
It's definitely a radical departure from how we typically think about governance, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic here. Getting everyone on board with something like this, especially those who benefit from how things are now, feels, well, a little unrealistic. Like a Herculean task.
Yeah, you're not wrong to be skeptical. It's a monumental challenge for sure, but Consocio tries to address this by using a clever combo of incentives and it's a unique measurement tool. It's called the coefficient of consociation.
Of course it is. Another futuristic term. What in the world is a coefficient of consociation?
Remember those complex diagrams that you mentioned? This is where those come into play. This coefficient uses this, it's kind of a sophisticated triangulation method to analyze how all the different groups in society, how they're interacting, and whether those interactions are pushing us closer to or further away from eubiosis.
So it's like a social barometer, kind of. Measuring the health of all of our interactions on a global scale. That just seems incredibly complex. How do you even quantify something like that?
That's where those intricate visuals come in. They map out all the different types of interactions. Cooperation, competition, mutualism, even things like parasitism. And then they assign values to those interactions based on their impact on the four pillars of eubiosis.
So they're acknowledging that not everyone's going to, play nice in this system. There's room for the bad actors, but they'll be measured.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully mitigated, right?
Yeah, exactly. The folks who came up with Consocio, they're not naive to how the world works, but they believe that by measuring and analyzing these social dynamics, that it's actually possible to incentivize positive behavior, to create a system that's more like resistant to manipulation.
It's a very interesting concept, this idea of like a self-regulating social ecosystem.
Yeah.
But how do you get people, especially people who benefit from how things are now, to even care about this coefficient of...
Consociation, yeah, it's a mouthful. Well, this is where their idea of a digital social contract comes in. Okay, so imagine a contract, right? But instead of being etched in ink and paper, it's encoded onto like a unique digital identifier. It's tied to each individual. It's called a soul-bound NFT ID.
Soul-bound NFTs. Okay, now we're really venturing into uncharted territory here. How would this digital social contract actually work in real life?
Think of it as an agreement. an agreement to uphold those principles of eubiosis we talked about, to participate in this new model of society in a way that hopefully benefits everyone. And it's not about forcing people to comply. It's about creating a system where aligning your actions with these goals, with eubiosis, brings real, tangible benefits.
Okay, benefits like?
And this is where another revolutionary concept comes in. It's called MP tokens. It stands for Mutual Assured Construction.
Mutual assured construction.
Mm.
Okay, that sounds kind of intense. Like, are we talking a high-stakes game of digital Jenga with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance here?
That's a very vivid way to put it, but it's not about destruction at all. Think of these EMIC tokens as kind of a collective insurance policy and an incentive system, all rolled into one. So stakeholders contribute to a shared pool of resources, and then these M2 tokens are used to reward the folks who are actively contributing to the system's success. So it bolsters the stability and resilience of the entire thing.
Okay, so it's like a safety net, but it also encourages participation. It rewards good behavior. So the more you contribute to eubiosis, the more secure your stake in the system. Literal.
Exactly. And because it's mutual, everyone has a vested interest in making sure the whole system succeeds. It's really a fascinating approach to risk management and incentive structures on a global scale.
I'll say, this is a lot to take in. We've got programmable governance, a social barometer, digital contracts, and now these Anki tokens. It's like we've been transported into this whole new dimension of how we structure society.
And we haven't even gotten to one of the most intriguing and potentially revolutionary elements of Consocio, their idea of a beneficent currency.
And efficient currency, okay, that sounds like straight out of Star Trek.
And
We're talking about a world where, like, money grows on trees, everyone gets a free lunch.
not quite. Although the idea is pre-revolutionary. Consocio is proposing like a fundamental shift in how we value things. It's not just about creating another cryptocurrency. Beneficent currency aims to kind of like measure and reward actions that contribute to the greater good, you know? It's about aligning our incentives as individuals with like collective well-being.
Okay, so it's like a value system and a currency all in one. How would that even work in the real world? Give me an example.
Okay, so imagine a world where volunteering your time, like reducing your carbon footprint, even just being a good neighbor, those things earn you currency. And that currency has real value in the system. You could use it to, I don't know, access services or gain voting power within that stakeholder foundation we were talking about, or even just as like a signal of your reputation, your trustworthiness.
So basically, the more you contribute to eubiosis, the wealthier you become, literally and figuratively. It's like they're trying to gamify being a good human.
Yeah, in a way, I guess. But it's deeper than just a game, right? Consocio's betting on this idea that humans are like inherently driven to contribute to something bigger than themselves. That by aligning those incentives, by creating a system where being a good person is actually recognized, rewarded, we can unlock this like new era of cooperation and progress.
It's a bold vision, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But how does any of this translate into real-world change? Like, we've explored all these fascinating concepts, but how does Consocio actually see itself impacting the world beyond just being a thought experiment, I mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Where the rubber meets the road. But Consocio, they give some really compelling examples in these materials you sent over. They have this whole strategy outcome matrix. It shows exactly how their model could be applied to all these different parts of society.
Okay, strategy outcome matrix, huh? Sounds a little dry, but I'm always down for a good strategy session. Let's dive in. What sectors are we talking about here, and what kind of impact are we envisioning?
Okay, let's start with a sector that's, well, often kind of starved for resources and always struggling to like prove its impact, civil society. So imagine nonprofits, community groups, right? But they're empowered by all of Consocio's tools, by this beneficent currency. They could secure funding based on the actual impact of their work, not just how good they are at writing grant proposals.
So instead of all that bureaucratic red tape, they're directly rewarded for having a positive impact. That would be huge for organizations doing really vital work.
Absolutely. And it goes way beyond just charity. Consocio sees businesses as playing a key role too, embracing this idea of, they call it, systemic philanthropy.
Systemic philanthropy.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting really fancy. Is that like corporate social responsibility, but on steroids?
You could say that. Think of it as moving beyond just, doing less harm to actually baking social and environmental impact into their business models. Companies would be incentivized to actually make the world a better place, not just because it looks good, but because it's good for business.
Okay, now that is something I can get behind. But what about the really big players? Governments, They're notorious for being slow to adapt, let's just say. How's Consocio going to get them on board?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, right? It's a huge undertaking. But Consocio sees potential there in like reshaping how governments approach things like resource management, even conflict resolution. Imagine international agreements built on blockchain, where you can track progress in real time and the benefits of, cooperation are undeniable.
It's a far cry from how international diplomacy usually works, that's for sure. But I gotta say, the idea of like nations actually collaborating on solutions together, guided by data, by transparency, it's really appealing.
And that's really what Consocio is all about. It's not about utopian ideals. It's about taking a hard look at the systems that shape our world and like actually trying to improve them. They're not afraid to tackle the big messy challenges and come up with some equally ambitious solutions.
Well, it's been quite a journey, that's for sure. Exploring the world of Consocio. We've gone from programmable governance to beneficent currency to a future where our individual actions could have a real tangible impact on the world around us. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. But if there's one thing that's clear, it's that Consocio is offering a really powerful vision. A vision of what's possible when we combine technology with, a genuine commitment to the greater good.
It's a vision that definitely sparks some excitement, but also, a little healthy skepticism, which is always a good thing, especially when we're talking about the future. And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. It's not about giving you all the answers. It's about giving you, dear listener, the tools you need to ask the right questions. What do you think about Consocio? Is this the future? A pipe dream? We want to know. Until next time, keep on diving.